Join us on Path of Faith, where we seek to inspire and empower you on your spiritual journey, offering guidance and support as you navigate life's challenges with faith and courage. Father Fabio, if God is omnipresent, is he the owner of good and evil? Dear one, the fact that God is omnipresent has nothing to do with the origin of evil, because omnipresent means being everywhere, the omnipresence of God. So God is here. God is there with you. He is present everywhere. The question of the origin of evil is a much discussed theological issue. We have a very beautiful reflection in Christian Catholic theology regarding the origin of evil. But the most important thing in all of this, because I know that what bothers us the most is this, is to think, if God is good, how can bad things happen? Who is responsible for all these bad things happening? We have an interesting explanation, which is the origin of sin. Sin as the door that opened for evil to have power over us. Then you have all the metaphor of paradise that was lost, of the apple that was eaten, of the expulsion of Adam and Eve, of that space that God had placed so that they could live in harmony. We have this parable as an indication that evil arose precisely at the moment when we broke the covenant with God. At the moment when Adam and Eve wanted to be others, wanted to be gods, they forgot about human condition, forgot who they were, and wanted to be who they could not be. And from the moment we want what is not rightfully ours, we begin to establish injustice. Have you noticed that? How many bad things happen? Precisely because we do not know how to recognize what is not ours. Why is theft inherently evil? Stealing something from someone is evil. That is evil because I do not respect the space that is delimited. It belongs to another, but I want it for myself. The same thing when you have the presence of evil. Life. When I go and kill someone, it is the lack of respect for what the other is. Violence has its origin in this. Now, what makes me evil? It's my adherence to this project. It is very dangerous for us to blame all guilt on the devil. Oh, it's the devil who wants this. It's the devil who makes it happen. Yes, but if the devil wants it, we are the ones who carry it out for him. Have you ever seen the devil walking the streets? No. I have seen diabolical people walking the streets. The devil himself, no. There is no problem here. We do not have a devil here. The other day, a woman asked me, Father, do you perform exorcisms? I stopped to think, how can I perform an exorcism? No. Then I thought, but immediately I said, no, there is a way for you to perform an exorcism. You love. Every time you love, my friend, the devil has no place with you. The devil cannot stand a person who loves. The devil cannot do absolutely anything in the life of a person who seeks goodness, who seeks partnership with truth. The devil begins to have a say in our lives when we open the doors for him to sit, to have a coffee in our house, to have a little whiskey with us. Then that's it. You start opening the doors. Oh, come smoke some marijuana. And the devil sits and smokes marijuana. Let's sniff some cocaine. It's the opposite, right? It's me who is adhering to what is a process of breaking within me. This week I was in Itapemirim. I met a young man there. I think his name is Paulo. During the show, I saw that he was very quiet, but I had already seen him like that because he was very close. And at the end of the show, he was already up on something, waving and singing. And then he asked, I understood that he wanted to talk to me. And then he came to the dressing room to give me a hug. And he said to me like this, Father, I'm struggling to free myself from drugs. And then I hugged him and said to him, my friend, freeing yourself from drugs is the same as you starting to love yourself again. Because drugs are nothing but a lack of love. I will judge within myself a toxin that will harm me. I will judge within myself a substance that will numb me, that will take away my awareness of things, that will distance me from the people I love, that will take away the peace of mind from the people I love. How sad it is. The drug addict does not see the suffering he causes. The mother who does not sleep, who until she sees her son coming home, no matter how bad he is, she likes to see him arrive anyway. She doesn't sleep because she keeps thinking, my God, where's my son now? So cutting with drugs is reestablishing the bonds of love that you have. When you say, I'm going to stop smoking this marijuana, I'm going to stop doping myself, I'm going to stop drinking, especially because the worst of all addictions for me is the socialized one, the one we do in front of everyone. Alcohol is terrible, and every time a person decides to stop drinking, they are not deciding for themselves alone. It's also because of the people they are making suffer that they are destroying. It's so beautiful to see a person react because of the love they have for others. So, this is a beautiful thing to see. Now, evil, it enters into the context of our lives based on our choices. I choose evil. It exists. It is concrete. It is real. But it only tries to seduce. It is me who will adhere to it and will represent it in my life. More than knowing its origin, it is discovering a way to neutralize it. I don't know how evil entered the world. I don't have that answer. I have the suggestion that theology that the parable gives me, but I don't have a ready answer for that. So what do I do? If I don't know how evil entered the world, I can avoid it entering me. That is what is right and possible. Only those who have read Father FÁBIO de Melo's books know how transformative they are. They make us reflect and change our perspective on life. If you haven't read them yet, don't miss this great opportunity. Learn more by clicking on the links in the description. Father FÁBIO, what can we do when fear prevents us from fulfilling what God wants from us? Fear is a natural reaction to everything that tends to be new in our lives. Of course, fear is a natural reaction to various situations in life. Fear is natural in us because it points us to what is a limit. Because I am limited, I am afraid. I'm afraid of burning my finger, so I'm limited. I can't put my hand in the fire. I know that. It's a limit I have. The limit of my skin, the limit of my physical condition. Now, when this fear of fire begins to prevent me from having a healthy relationship with everything that will have fire, for example, if I'm going to be near a bonfire, but I don't need to judge myself in it. It's the control we can exert over the fear we feel, which is always an experience of rationalization. The fire is there. I know it's dangerous for me, but I start to manage the relationship I have with it. Everything in life is like that. When I start to manage the fears I feel, I start to overcome them. I cannot allow fear to become an oppressive force that diminishes the quality of my life. We often tend to live in fear of novelty. Everything that will be new in our lives, the changes we will face. Who feels fear, for example, when they have to change jobs? We don't know if it will work out. Who will get married? Who will face a new lifestyle? Will always go through the experience of fear. Because novelty, we will leave a comfortable region, a reality that we are already accustomed to, and we will move to a new territory. And it is natural for us to be afraid of that. What is not natural is for fear to prevail. That is why we always need to be careful to manage new realities, always seeking that courage that minimizes the power of fear. When we feel that we are feeling too much fear and we are missing opportunities because of the fear we feel, we lose precious opportunities. The other day, I even met a girl who was sharing with me, Father, I'm very afraid of growing in the relationship with my boyfriend because the last relationship I had made me suffer a lot. So she couldn't invest in the new relationship because she brought the scars of a relationship that was very tragic for her. It ended with a lot of suffering. She suffered a lot at the hands of that boy, that old boyfriend. So now she was facing the fear that if she loved again, she would have to go through the same situation she went through. And that's where we need to rationalize. It's the formula that often works. How am I going to rationalize a situation? How can this girl rationalize the fear she has of the new relationship? It's about thinking. This guy I'm dating now is not the same. He doesn't necessarily have the same personality as the one I dated before. It doesn't mean that what I experienced with the other, I will have to experience with this one too. That's rationalization. Because the big challenge my people, is to put meaning and reason into what we feel. Put meaning into feeling. That is, shed light on what I am feeling and understand my feeling, which is not always true. Not everything I feel is true. So, I'm afraid of being betrayed again, but I may not have reasons for that. It may be that the person next to me today does not give me any reasons to feel this fear, but because I have marks from the past, today I deal with her with fear, insecurity. It's interesting for us to realize that humans will always need healing. Often the relationship doesn't work today because we haven't healed from the relationship we had. That happened. That was tragic for everyone. So this thing of organizing life little by little as we live, correcting our feelings, doing emotional digestion. When we eat something that makes us sick, we have stomach upset, right? But when we also feel something that made us sick, we need to experience emotional digestion. That is the process of eliminating what was not good and keeping what was good. That's digestion. Well-done digestion is when the body keeps what it extracted from the food and throws away what is no longer good. It digested. When it doesn't digest, it's because the food stayed in the stomach. And since the stomach wasn't made to keep the food, but it was made only to be an instrument for that food to be digested and thrown, the proteins, vitamins, minerals from our food into the blood to continue feeding the body. The stomach wasn't made to be a storage place. We have upset stomach. The food stayed longer than it should have for some reason, either because it was spoiled or because it was too heavy, ate more than it should, right? Affection and feeling work the same way. And often I live this emotional indigestion like this, keeping inside me what should have been eliminated. Or judging for my effective life, what was the learning from everything I lived? If I don't do this digestion, I keep that as a bad thing and start projecting onto others what didn't work from that first experience. And that often makes us afraid. You know, when we go into a relationship with another, bringing the marks of a past that was not good. Many times we take this also, not only in the dating issue, marriage, no, in friendship, no. In everything in life, sometimes we make the reading of the new that is before us with what we already have as experience. So the great challenge is to ensure that fear does not prevail, that what was the experience of the past does not prevail over us. Fear will always be natural because we will analyze life based on what we have already experienced. And if what we experienced we did not put in the right place, then we run the risk of making this experience always determinate for us, as it scares us, limits us, and prevents us from going beyond. But it is always good for us to make this effort so that this fear does not prevail. The choices we make, the way we choose to educate our children, the choice we make in how we govern our home, all of this is determinant for our future satisfaction or dissatisfaction. We used to say, folks on Twitter, to whom I want to send a big hug, retweeted this phrase a lot. God always forgives, man sometimes, nature never. And that's how it is. Life, what we have chosen, will one day demand from us. When we need to shed those deep tears, the only way is to try to figure out what we can fix today. The big problem is that we often find out there's not much left to do. There's one thing in raising children, my people, that's called character. That's determinate. What is character? It's everything that's been imprinted, everything that's been left in the mind, in the heart, and that identifies us as a person. When we say, wow, this person has character, that means they don't need to be watched over. They have a good foundation. When a storm comes and starts tearing off everything, only what has a good foundation remains on the ground. Life is the same. Sometimes storms blow over us and we feel our structures slipping. The greater, the more rooted a person's character is in good values, in well-built realities, the greater their ability to resist and stay standing will be. What's the big problem of today's world? The fragility of people. It's astounding, folks. It's terrible how we identify this all the time. Life is as hard today as it was 50 years ago. What changes are often the opportunities. We have a lot of possibilities today, so of course we'll suffer a bit more. The greater the number of possibilities a person has, the greater the number of choices they'll have to make. So today's human beings need to be very prepared to survive. But difficulties have existed since the beginning of time. Now, what scares me is realize how fragile people are nowadays. They give up too easily. It's astonishing how today we're not willing to live the sacrifices life demands. And I think that's the root of the big problem. Raising a child, bringing a child into the world, a person brings the child into the world, but they want to keep living the way they did before they had children. That's very irresponsible. One day I was watching that TV lady, Astrid Fontanelli, who's a TV presenter, on the same program where I met Fleur de Lis. She adopted a boy, and the TV presenter was asking, "So, Astrid, how's your life now?" After the child came. She said, "Totally changed." Just with that sentence, you already know Astrid is on the right path. A child who doesn't totally change a mother and father's life isn't being well managed. Then the presenter asked, "But how? What changed?" She said, "I don't go out like I used to. This boy needs to be watched all the time. I don't entrust this solely to the babysitters. I make sure to spend as much time with him as I can." Why? My people, whoever spends more time with the child will have influence over them. Whoever spends more time with that child. So, you see, even if you trust the babysitter's physical care, you know the babysitter won't let them suffocate. You know the babysitter will feed them at the right time, bathe them at the right time, put them to sleep at the right time. But what about character? Who's going to instill that in the child? The babysitter or you? Are our babysitters prepared to offer the character our children need? Sometimes they are. Sometimes they're even more prepared than the parents. But that's not always the case. Character is what will determine the choices. What will help this boy and this girl make life choices. We're shocked to see how early our children are turning to drugs these days. Of course, our 11, 12-year-old children are already living adult lives. They're not prepared for adult life, but they're already able to live it. We've said it here so many times. I particularly think it's an aggression against our children when we expose them to a stage of life they're not prepared for. Children have to be children. Teenagers are teenagers. They can't live. They can't rush into something they're not prepared for. That's a crime. And that's why, if you've brought a child into the world, start managing their stay in the world now. Because if that child doesn't turn out right later, we won't have anyone else to blame. Who's the biggest responsible? Who's the first responsible for raising children? It's the father and mother. Of course, you'll have a series of collaborators, the school where they'll study, the daycare where they'll stay, the friends surrounding them, but you also manage all of that. If you don't make the effort every day to know what happened at school, occasionally visit there, ask the teacher how your child's behaving in there. Because sometimes the child you have at home isn't the same child the teacher has there. Sometimes there's a big difference. Is the home extending to the school? Is the school extending to the home? Not always. Sometimes we have differences. So it's necessary for those who brought the child into the world to manage all of this. Because otherwise, they'll cry later. Oh, we'll have to set limits for this child. Set them. It's better to set them now than regret not doing so later. Then the child becomes too fragile at 18, at 20. We mentioned last week about the woman priest. You talk about those who are into drugs. You talk about those who are into prostitution. But you don't talk about those who are into laziness. It's true. Laziness today is a terrible thing. Why? Because it's directly linked to fragility. I don't know where it started, but what's a very concrete reality is that we're losing the ability to endure sacrifices. Folks, we want everything very easy. If something requires a bit of effort, we think it's not worth it, we let it go. I've seen stories around me. I'm not just talking about things I've seen from afar. No, I've seen many people around me not succeed. Why? Because they didn't want to make the sacrifice at the right time. They didn't want to study in that school. Why? Because it was too demanding. Oh, go to the other one, that's okay, that won't be so much trouble. Is that honest? Is it honest to exchange something that will better prepare us for the future just because we'll have to suffer a bit more? It's not possible. This Christian teaching that many people criticize, the church preached sacrifice too much. I might agree that sometimes the preaching was exaggerated, but today this laissez-faire culture, do whatever you want, leave everything very loose, that won't build people either. If I want a result, I have to know that to achieve that result in the future, I have to strive in the present. It won't work, folks. It won't work if you let things grow however they want, if you don't impose limits, if you don't say no at the right time, if you don't say yes at the right time, if you don't have that sacrifice every day, do the homework. It's not just the child who has to do homework. Parents have to do homework too. And what's homework? How was your day today? Where did you go? How was that story? It's not about investigating, no. It's about becoming friends, about trying to establish that dialogue, which is hard work. It's really annoying. Sometimes you come home tired, needing rest, and you come home wanting to be free from everyone, and then you end up giving up all of that. Okay, one day you're too tired, but you can't give up on that every day. How many times do you see little kids? I talk about this in the book, The Kidnapping of Subjectivity, which I recommend to all parents because it talks about this. There are concrete examples of a mother who can't handle her 5-year-old. The 5-year-old commands her. He has total authority over her. Why? Because she's afraid to contradict the child. So we need to be very careful because sometimes by not setting limits at the right time, we end up planting a very serious problem for the future. And I'll say it again, life can only succeed through the sincere experience of a well-made sacrifice, of a well-made renunciation, because that's what will give us the conditions to be able to get there and have the right to sit and rest. There's no way to rest from the mission of being a parent. It's day by day, it's a struggle. Nobody told you to get married. Nobody told you to have children. Nobody forced you into this. It's a choice. So if you made that choice, you need to take that responsibility every day. And it won't weigh heavy on you as long as you love. Love is what solves all of this. That's interesting too. You notice that when you truly love someone, you're capable of making sacrifices. And you start discovering the path that love indicates to say no at the right time and to say yes at the right time. That's how it has to be. There's no other way. Now, is it a struggle? Is it sacrifice? It is. But nobody said it would be very easy either. A good portion of our disappointments stem from the understanding that people should act towards us exactly as we act towards them. We need to lose that pretension. People are governed by other commands, different from ours. The secret is to continue offering the best of ourselves to others, even if it's not always reciprocal. I know this is a commonplace. You've probably thought about it a lot. But every now and then, it's good to shed light on what is often obscure to us, despite knowing it's there. Because sometimes knowing isn't enough. Sometimes we need to continually renew this within ourselves. Why do we keep getting frustrated with people? Because they didn't meet our expectations. Because deep down, even though we know others are not obligated to be as we want them to be, we nurture this illusion. We carry this pretension. People are who they are. Sometimes they'll align perfectly with us. Sometimes they'll err, just as we also succeed and fail with others. What we can do is minimize these expectations within ourselves. Are you getting to know someone? Do everything you can to not idealize that person. Make every effort. Make the effort not to place on them expectations that have much more to do with you than with them. Have the simplicity and honesty to look at yourself, to look at others through the lens of reality. People are good. People are bad. People succeed. People fail. Just like you and I are also good, bad, successful, and flawed. We need simplicity in the way we look at things, to minimize as much as possible the expectations we have so that our encounters are fruitful, more real. Because others definitely aren't obligated to be as we would like. I struggle a lot with rejection. I have an immense need to please people, even those who despise me. What's the reason for that? It's funny because sometimes when we identify this within ourselves, you feel like you're trying too hard to please, when in reality, it's an insecurity that sometimes pushes the other further away. It's like when you're trying to be too nice, when you want to be too present in someone's life. It's sometimes the exaggeration of being. The best way to control this is first to realize that there's a measure to how much you should be in someone else's life. So you first seek the satisfaction of being who you are. Pleasing others is a consequence. And you being in someone else's life within a measure that is neither too little nor too much. I don't know if you're familiar with that text by Mario Quintana, the Quindim at the Gate. They say he loved Quindim, and he had a lady who was passionate about his work, but she never wanted to meet him. She was his neighbor, but she preserved Mario Quintana's privacy a lot. She saw him from afar, knew he was the great poet she read. So what did she do? She found out about his taste for Quindim, and she started leaving Quindims at the gate. And on the first one, she left. She wrote, "I leave Quindims, but not to burden you with my presence. I don't want to burden you with my presence." And I find that interesting when someone discovers there's a personal satisfaction in liking someone, but at the same time, they don't want to burden them with their presence. They don't want to be excessive in someone else's life. And sometimes, out of insecurity, I still don't have the confidence in who I am. I go to the meeting, I go to the encounter caring too much, and all of this ends up being a reason to push away instead of bringing closer. It's the gift of lightness. You notice how affectionate a person is because they are light, they don't demand things, they understand you just the way you are. It's so cool that there are people who have this thing of throwing happiness onto you, in a sense. If you don't do what they imagine you should do, it seems like the problem is yours. And it's not. I mean, each one, it's not my fault, right? You want to attribute a failure, a success to another person, right? Exactly. And it's not fair, right? It's not fair. And especially when you realize you projected too much of what you expected from the other person. That's also extremely disastrous. I really like something that, it's very Aristotelian, but it's the concept of the uselessness of friendship. Friendship is beautiful because it's useless. Not in the ugly sense of the word useless, but in the sense that they are complete people with all their imperfections, and they choose to be part of each other's lives. One helps the other, not out of utility. When I'm friends with someone out of utility, I'm not really friends with them. I'm their friend because you can help me with this and that. I'm your friend because you have a college degree and I want to get a job. I'm your friend because you own a company and can do something for me. I'm your friend because you have a boat and I like sailing, so I'm not your friend. I'm your friend because I'm your friend. The things you provide me with, right? Many times, right? The person is interested in what the other person provides. Sometimes, because you have a certain recognition, people want to be on your side, right? And then it's sad because in moments, sometimes but you end up alone, isolated. Today I saw something that I'm going to say here. I have deep admiration for Father Julio Lancelotti. You do too, right? And Father Julio, so I learned to admire more and more for seeing him take care of homeless people. And so then I see that the homeless people know him by name, ask for his blessing. So it's a sign that he stays there, that he stays with them, that he takes care. It's not marketing, right? So Father Julio said, look, Salida, I learned to love Father Fabio because in the most difficult moments of my life, when people judged me in a hasty way, when people didn't understand me, I watched his show. And I looked and I felt that God spoke to my heart through him, through his priestly life, and I became more priestly, more like a priest, right? That's so beautiful, right? And the affectionate way that the Lord treated, I'll throw confetti at you. But one of the things I find most beautiful about your way of speaking about the Word of God is when you talk about that sinful woman who knew she was going to die, who was condemned, and that Jesus, in that magnificent way, looked deep into her eyes, didn't challenge the law, didn't say anything, just gave a detail of love. Let him who is without sin cast the first stone. That's beautiful. You know, today I was talking at home, and we were discussing an event involving someone we love very much, a difficulty, a suffering they went through, a loss. And I was just talking about how important it is, how much of a difference it makes in our lives when even when we're suffering, even when we are hurt by events, don't allow the victim mentality to take root within us. Because the victim mentality, the one that conditions us, to think, oh, poor me, I didn't deserve what happened to me. That spirit, it's very diabolical within us because it breaks our capacity for recovery. Every time I think life has been unfair to me, every time I think life owes me something, I naturally paralyze my strengths and anything that could lead me forward. And sometimes we are very cruel to ourselves like that. We feed for years and years and years without realizing that we are feeding this victim spirit. Life owes us nothing. No. Life is always beautiful if we perceive it as such. If we're willing to cast our eyes on what still remains. Okay, we lost. And what can we do to recover even a little more than what we lost? Sometimes in some situations that we think were a loss, it was actually a blessing. Because before I used to get really annoyed, by anything. Sometimes I'd get annoyed about a flight that went wrong. Not today. I've been trying to replace the logic of what annoyed me with this. So okay, it didn't happen because I wasn't supposed to go. So I'll make the most of this moment I have here and see what good I can extract from it. And when we start to abandon this spirit that's sometimes diabolical, then why is it diabolical? Because it disrupts the harmony within us. So many times I have diabolical feelings. If I look at my life and see myself as a poor victim, poor me, this self-pity, that's diabolical. It's a diabolical feeling. What I need to do is roll up my sleeves and get to work on what I can still do, and even recognize the part I play in what doesn't go right. Because sometimes it's a sequence of mistakes. It went wrong here, it went wrong there, and I don't have the courage to start looking at how I've been doing things. Sometimes it's a disharmony that precedes all other mistakes. A disharmony that I'm often used to and no longer perceive its effects on me. So, a good way for us to heal our behavior, what is often determinant in us, our way of being, I need to heal my way of being. It's me realizing the beauty of life. Yes, life is beautiful. Rid myself of victimhood and go fight. Go seek my share. There's so much to live, my friends. Visit a hospital and you'll see. When a person faces the limit, illness is like that, right? It strips us of all the excesses. We become very real. Find someone who is living the destitution that illness shows, and you'll see a real human being. Because sometimes when we're very healthy, very full of opportunities, we hide, we pretend. But illness doesn't. It takes everything from us. It takes everything that could seem like a hiding place for us, everything that could function as a hiding place. In fact, I keep identifying how, when a person experiences maturation, how they discard these hiding places throughout life. And it's so good to live with these people who no longer need hiding places. Maturity does that to us. We discard the hiding places that were once so fundamental for us to be who we wanted to be. And then the passage of time makes it so that those who are truly interested in us stay by our side, not just in our shells. Because success is a shell. Sometimes people approach you because they know you're someone who succeeded in your field. So it's good to be seen with you. It's good to take a photo with you. It's good to show others that they're close to you, that they're your friend. But in reality, they're not interested in who you are. They're interested in the shell you have, which helps them have another shell, which might be interesting. Today, we live in this time where we demonstrate ourselves so much, show ourselves so much. This can become a neurosis because you end up seeking people not to truly meet them, but to feed your need to document and have material to post later. So When we meet and don't feel the need to publicize what we've experienced, it's because we truly appreciate what we've experienced. I'm not saying publishing is a problem. I'm saying that often, in the excess of publication, we're hiding our need to instrumentalize the other, to just enjoy the shell that is the other. Success is an example. But money, too. How many people approach others because of what they can materially offer them? Which is also nonsense, because it could be the most comfortable situation in the world. Personally, I can't stand it if my soul isn't feeling good. Oh, that boat is wonderful. We're going to spend a week there. God forbid a wonderful boat with people we don't identify with. What might seem like paradise to me is hell. Oh, but we're going on a beautiful trip. All expenses paid. And what do I pay to be there emotionally? And there are people who subject themselves to this. They spent the weekend just read here to show off, just to maintain their own shell and that of others. And then the emptiness of the heart naturally happens. We become hollow inside because life is so outward, and so little inward, that we end up losing our own inner joy. So overcoming all this, so that life is worth it, requires daily reflection, requires a daily exercise of identifying where are we really exercising ourselves. I'm talking about myself too, of course, but I'm sure you, in different instances, experience the same conflict I do. You also notice the social hollowness, the anthropological hollowness all around you, or even within you, because that has been a characteristic of our times. We are increasingly empty. We are disinclined towards content. We are very fond of brief speeches. And with that, we are causing a terrible human loss. We're empty, we're foolish, we're superficial, we're trivial. And this triviality, this superficiality, has caused a terrible social loss. And that's why we need to keep emphasizing this. If we don't change the way we educate our children, instilling values in them from an early age, we shouldn't expect change. If I skip the toll booth to avoid paying, and if I'm enjoying it like everyone else who pays, I have no right to open my mouth to talk about corruption in Brasilia. If I'm not honest in my working relationship with my employee, if I deprive him of his rights, if I'm not fair to those who work with me in compensation, I have no right to speak. Of the thieves who loot stores, who feel entitled to break everything. So it's a chain. I don't want to be left out of this reflection. You know why? Because the hollow world is also in me. God forbid I keep making moralistic speeches, putting myself outside of history. No. I also have to manage the dangers of frivolity daily. Or do you think I'm immune? I'm not. I reflect all the time on how I choose to be who I am, to be who I can be. And if we don't rid ourselves of the complacency that makes us crazy, foolish, superficial, and unable to transform realities, we lose the joy of life. Because what's good, what makes us feel alive, is precisely when we realize that we contribute to a process. And over time, we start giving up wanting to change the world, When we're younger, we have all those dreams. That thing, I'm going to be a revolutionary. Until the day you discover that you can't change much. Okay, but then where can I? And you start acting in the space that suits you. For example, by pulling people out of this victim mentality, I can't maintain the victims. That poor person, eternally pitiful, who doesn't even want to work, who we have to carry on our backs forever. I'm not obligated. Oh, but Father, what about charity? Charity, my daughter, is opening the eyes of the other so that they go get their share. Sometimes charity is putting the other in their place. Enough. I'm not your automatic debit. How many of us within our homes represent this? We stopped being people a long time ago. The other only sees us as an automatic debit. There's nothing crueler than that. You even lose the pleasure of helping because the other only sees you as an ATM where they go, enter a PIN, and take what they want from you. Sometimes we maintain these relationships because we lack the courage to break the victimhood that is within us, that is in the other. I learned a lot of this from life. Sometimes the victim is maintained by me, who insist on helping, and don't realize that sometimes the best way to help is to wake them up, say no once in a while, so that they start living again. This life is too beautiful to be wasted with dishonesty, or for me to be forever a poor victim, always justified by the difficult past I had. There are so many stories inside me that would give me the right to say, wow, come on, Father Fabio, poor thing, what a difficult life. No, I don't want that, no. What I want is to recruit daily what life can offer me, even if it's just a little thread. I'll hold on to it. Life I want to conquer through hard work, because I already have God's grace. Oh, but if I don't do the hard work, grace doesn't act. Grace doesn't even produce effects on me if I don't put in the hard work. That's how it works. Want an easy life? Sit on a coconut pudding. Often, we kill our life, or kill the opportunity to live well, because we are not able to read correctly what time is asking of us. Because that's how it is. Everyday time will ask us for something. And it's this attentive look that gives us this condition, this clarity to perceive what today is truly calling my name. What is it today that is truly calling for me? What is the reality today that is unavoidable? My people, sometimes we are so negligent in perceiving this that sometimes we waste a month, a year, 10, 20, putting our effort into a reality that wasn't meant for that moment. And that's why it's so interesting for us to develop the ability to say no and to say yes. That this is an ability that only maturity brings us. That sometimes because we are immature, we don't even know how to say no. We don't know how to look at the urgencies of time. So we live to please others? No. Before pleasing others, you need to perceive what life is asking of you. That not always what you can do to please the other is in line with what life is asking of you. Even for us to grow, we have to have the courage to cut many things. Sacred scripture says, a time to kill, a time to give birth. Everything depends on the keen perception that we need to have to look at the present moment and discover what truly deserves our effort. How many times in my life have I put my effort in the wrong place, in the wrong issue? And then there's no way to be happy. There's no way for me to discover contentment, knowing that my effort wasn't where it should have been. There's no possibility for me to feel fulfilled, to feel good about my choices, because what will make me feel good is to look at the context of my choices and be comfortable with what was chosen. It's interesting because sometimes our way of living even deprives us of this perception. We are very strange to ourselves. Not strange with others, no, it's strange to ourselves. Strangers to ourselves. The body needs the soul. Yes, I need sustenance for my life. I need to give meaning to my matter. I need to put soul into everything that I am. Even in the house where I live, and life has taught me that the house is not a conglomerate of walls. The house is a feeling that occurs to me. It's not just a material construction, no. When I enter within those walls that I built with my work, there I identify the soul that sustains me. It's a feeling that occurs to me. I'm sure we all experience this. When we open the door of the house, when we enter, it's a good feeling that occurs to us. That's soul. It's when matter is full of meanings. It's when we start to attribute a meaning that goes beyond the walls, the furniture, the roof, the siding, the garden, the front gate. It's a feeling that occurs to us. And it's interesting that the quality of our life depends on and is intimately linked to our ability to infuse soul into things. I'm not talking about that soul, the deepest meaning of our life, that spiritual dimension that connects me with eternity. No, I'm talking about everything that lives and makes sense to matter, brings meaning to what is material. So we use the term soul improperly to realize that my objects are permeated by a meaning that goes beyond matter. As Rubem Alves used to say, there are things that are more than things. They are things that remind us. That is, they become a sacramental. Just as I bring a souvenir from the trip, that is for me just a sacramental of something that was good, that was lived, that was experienced, that made me feel good. But now, in my opportunity to infuse soul into this body, in this unique opportunity that I have to live my life well daily and thus inflate air into all of this, just as I perceive this other soul of the things in my house when I arrive with a feeling that occurs to me. Living well, bringing me the awareness that today, when I observe the urgencies of my life and I put my effort into these urgencies, I am infusing soul into my body. Father, this separatist view doesn't match with Christian theology. I know. This is just didactic. This separation is only didactic. It all works together. Body and soul are, although distinct realities, they work together. It's unity. We proclaim the unity of all this. Now, when I perceive, when I identify that I am not doing, that I am not making an effort to live well, I am indeed weakening the resources of my soul, which are precisely to help me live well the life of the body itself. They work together, my people, and we often neglect the observance of time, as in Scripture it says. The sacred writer speaks precisely of this, a time to weep and a time to laugh. There are moments when life itself shows you the need to cry, to let out your excesses, not to be afraid of sadness, to allow that sadness to dig within us, its riches, and to help us find the precious stone that only suffering could lead us to know. Then comes laughter. Laughter doesn't arise by chance. We used to sing that song too, right? I walk slowly because I've already been in a hurry, and I bring this smile because I've already cried too much. The smile is the result of tears shed well. The smile is the final result of a process of struggle that we establish, of observing day by day what effort that day asks of me. What do I need to do today to have the right to smile tomorrow? And it's good. You know why? Because as we are going through the tough times, knowing that they will be constructive, small smiles are already born along this process. When we talk about a final smile, it's just the metaphor of a well-done, well-lived process, a time to embrace, a time to distance oneself. How much suffering, right? In realizing distancing as necessary, the growth of the other, it's that child who goes away to study. You can't hold on to children. That's why it's time to embrace, it's time to take care, it's time to be together, and the time will come when that distance will be necessary for the course of life itself. Then he returns. But at first, we need the distance. It's the urgency of the day. The time has come. It's necessary to study. It's necessary to seek a future outside of here. My people, when we observe the movement of time and its urgencies, we enter into the context of an irreplaceable wisdom for our human fulfillment, a time to tear, a time to sow. If we don't have the courage many times to tear some realities, then we'll never be able to live the liberation of them. Today I even wrote about it. Many times we lament losing, and when in fact we observe what we lost, it wasn't loss, it was liberation. How many relationships need to be torn apart so that later they can be sewn back together the right way? To make all the illusions we have of the other fall to the ground, or all the pretensions we judge upon the other. No. The other doesn't have to meet my expectations. The other has to be themselves. If by chance there was an empathy with me, there we build a relationship of friendship. If not, just a relationship of respect. But it's necessary to tear apart. We need to live the confrontation that will later provoke a liberation in us. Anyway, life will always ask us for observation. Life will always ask us for calm, patience, because in a hurry, we overlook all these needs and we're not able to recognize them. Have you ever stopped to think about that? That sometimes life isn't going well? It's because you don't even know exactly what you need. Sometimes we get so anxious, so distressed, and we don't know why. We fail to reach the key point. We fail to discover the neuralgic point there, where the conflict is actually starting. Patience, right? We don't even have the patience to discover what is distressing us. It's our rush. It's the strange life that we are going to live. It's been a pleasure having you with us on Path of Faith. We value your feedback, so please share your thoughts in the comments, give us a thumbs up, share this video with others, and hit the subscribe button to stay connected with us.